come back.
Techno loading.
And we are live. Hello. I sounded so robotic then. Hello.
Hello, fellow human.
Hello, fellow human.
Hello!
This is the worst intro that we've ever done, actually.
Yeah,
See,
I agree.
Hi.
this. I mean, I should say this is why we don't do it live, people.
Yeah, this is why we don't do it live. Hello, this is
Yeah.
the Animite Tales. No, can we start again? No, hello, this is the Betarians
It's all fixed
podcast.
in editing.
It's all fixed in post, but it's oh, we don't ever edit. To be fair, anyone who's heard any of these, they already know. But if you are listening to this or even watching this, welcome back to the Betarians podcast. Sorry for such a long hiatus. I am joined today. It's me, Joe from Animite Tales on Twitter, or the Betarians. It depends on how and where you know me from. But I'm joined with my two fellow friends, Alex, aka Obscuracom,
Hello.
and Sam, aka Sam.
Good day.
Last time that we had one of these, we spoke about all sorts of different manners of powers, mythical abilities. We even spoke about time travel, even how like tabletop RPGs and imaginative games can actually help with mental health. But this year, a new birth into the 2020s. We're now in 2021. I thought that we'd finish up what we started by talking about, we said magical or special weapons. I think today we should finally talk about empowerment items. Any kind of item that grants whoever wields it or uses it some kind of special ability. Now, this has to be something that doesn't necessarily come from the fact that they have armor and therefore they are protected. It has to come from more than just the usual deep-seated object. For instance, it has to be an object that grants either a special ability, a technological advancement, or even a power that is given to the user. It has to come under one of these categories. So, for instance, like armor, that whilst the user is wearing it, they can breathe underwater. But when they take it off, or if it's destroyed, they no longer can. A piece of technology that gives the user temporary superpowers, or anything else, etc., similar to that. We spoke about this for a long time, because originally we wanted to do it where it was just only magic. In fact, I was really adamant on it being only magical items. Now we're talking about empowerment items, or specifically items that are in some way magical, or items that grant people abilities. So this covers literally everything. We're not going to use the usual setup. We're just going to dive straight into it and just pretty much go from there. So, I mean, I know Sam and Alex, you two have been bursting at the seams, waiting for the opportunity to be able to actually talk about these. So I'll let one of you two go first. What's a good example when you think of a magical item or an item that grants people powers, or an empowerment item? What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
This is going to sound weird, but Williams Wish Wellingtons.
Go on.
Well, Williams Wish Wellingtons, it's a kids TV show from my generation where William puts on his Wellingtons, and you're going to have a lot of fun when William puts on his Wellingtons. And these are magical Wellingtons where basically anything he wishes, comes to life, and he goes on many adventures. And I've fallen down a rabbit hole of research on this. There are certain rules that the Wellingtons have to follow. Like, they have to be put on the right feet, because apparently the wish reverses, when you put them on the wrong feet by accident. So, like, if you and he almost cancels Christmas because of it. It's a long story. Very complicated. But yeah, it's just basically this kid has the power of time, space, and all of the rules of the universe at his toe tips. And I don't know why William in particular is given. It's actually confirmed that he has changed the course of history many times. by just wishing himself into the past, so he could like just have some cool Roman adventures, and he defeats a gladiator, and he ends up being in the history books of Wellingtons. We don't know the far-reaching consequences of this little boy's, tampering with the fabric of reality. We just know that it's recorded. And what's cool about that is that that's actually based on a real story by Hans Christian Andersen. I mean, not a real story; it's a fairy story, but it's a real sort of thing called the Galoshes of Fortune. That's its real name, the Galoshes of Fortune, where the character in Hans Christian Andersen's story puts on these galoshes, and they could like travel anywhere in time, you know, within their own time and space, in any point in their own history, because they're wearing the galoshes, just by the power of thought.
Okay. So
Yeah,
you literally have two different things: a wish granting item and another one that is time travel.
yeah,
And I think that's kind of interesting because I mean, like, one thing that we actually spoke about when we were actually talking about time manipulation is it's it's almost relatively one of the most powerful abilities in existence. I think the only ability that's actually more powerful than time manipulation, other than literal godhood, is wish granting or wish based powers, because you can literally wish for anything. I mean, a lot of the times they have rules and laws, like like you can't wish for etc etc. Like, oh, you can't wish for infinite wishes, or you can't wish for infinite genies, or you can't wish for something that would entail harm another human being, or falter with their free will. But there are all sorts of kind of interesting ways that wishes can still be used and manifested. I don't know. I'm kind of interested in that kind of thing. I mean, it's kind of interesting to sort of think about a wearable object, like, as you said, with boots or galoshes, where it's just the power comes from thought, wishful thinking, or actual request.
I think it's also like there's a lot of like shoe-based magical items in like regular mythology. Like there's Hermes's winged sandals that give him super speed, and there's yeah, like the galoshes of fortune and stuff. It is just like, I don't know. I think it's like because it's like a way of sort of manifesting, how it works. Like you step forward, you go into the future, you step back, you go into the past, step sideways, go into a different part of the present, etc. Or like you're just sort of, it's like there you have to put them on physically, and then the magic begins now. Whereas like, with other things, it's like, okay, they just exist and it happens. Whereas like there's a physical thing that has to happen in order to grant you that power.
Yeah,
I think that's like, I don't know. I just find that kind of interesting that it's like there's quite a lot of shoe based things. I
Yeah.
had another shoe based one as well, which is in a movie that's truly terrible but has an interesting power.
I mean, what were you gonna say, Sam, about this?
Go on,
I was just going to mention. Speaking of shoe-based ones, I was going to mention the Wizard of Oz
Yeah,
and the ruby
Yeah.
red slippers that allow her to wish to go home, for there is no place like home.
that is probably one of my favorite references of of just shoes. Just like, I'm not a massive fan of of Oz. Hot take. Uh, but
How dare you?
I do like how they use the story to utilize shoes, where it's like the greatest ability is just to send someone back from another world, and it's like it's a magic that seems so useless in every situation, but at the end of a film or at the end of a series where all the girl wants to do is leave that place and go back home, it's the best thing to have. It's the best item to be given. And it is that thing of like, it's not a MacGuffin because it's not overly used. It's not anything like that. It's just when items have the exact ability and have met their specific situation, they become more important than an item that gives gives the character everything that they want, but not everything that they need. And at the end of that film, it is just literally she gets everything that she wants and needs in the same item. And I
Yeah,
I, I
almost
think there's something
power up
kind of
item.
Yeah, I think
Also,
it's kind of interesting.
having just looked this up, his Wellingtons are also red. So I'm curious if that's a relation to the ruby slippers from Alex in Wonderland.
It might be. It might be because it's like it borrows quite a lot from other stories and that. And also red. You know what? Red is like such a powerful sort of color. It's like you're going to notice it, and it's like I don't know. With a lot of magical items, they're often like red or like some very vivid color of like this is very dangerous or oh this is very powerful. Yeah, this is the item. I mean, they don't have quite the video game glow of this is an important item, but
I
that's sort
think
of a
it's
way
I
of
think it's
conveying that.
I think it's kind of interesting because in video games we see green and blue more as the positive colors, and then we see red and orange more as the sort of like negative colors. Whereas in a lot of other situations in films, red is usually seen as the more important thing, either as we said with rubies and with literally just like not necessarily warnings, but we actually do sometimes get like with Coca-Cola, they have like their red sign and everything, and it's that concept of I think it's like it's a color-based psychology where we see a color and it can sometimes bring out a different set of emotions or mindsets based on what colors we see. And maybe having that is one thing, but I think it's kind of weird that in a lot of legends, a lot of the time, or even series or shows, we see, as you said, the red slippers, the red shoes, the red ruby slippers. All of these things. All of these things are red. They must reference each other, yes, but we also have the fact that in Saint Nicholas, like Father Christmas, Santa Claus, he has a red suit and a red hat.
Thank you, Coca-Cola, because originally it was green.
It was green, yes, originally, and
So I just realized. Therefore, he became a Sith Lord because he went from green, the side of good, to red, the side of evil.
But it's kind of weird that we imagine that red is bad. It's very strange that we think that red is bad. When, in all honesty, if you see a drink that is red versus a drink that is green, which is the more naturally occurring drink? Because, okay, to be fair, that's actually a really bad example because, to be fair,
In the
red is
world of
almost
Mountain
indefinitely
Dew,
blood, green is almost indefinitely probably some kind of venom or poison.
I think
Either
we've
way,
just
you don't
been-
want to drink red or green. Don't drink red or green, kids.
What about yellow?
Moving on. So Sam, you had something as well. Like, are there any kind of examples of magical or empowerment items?
Many. But because I can't mention all the ones I'm thinking of, I will go simply with the one category of masks. Of course, there is the one I'm mostly thinking of is, of course, the ones in Majora's Mask, which allows you to change your state of being from a boy to a Deku, and not the one from My Hero Academia.
A Deku
A
scrub.
Yeah, pretty actually. Yeah, Deku scrub, like a wee tree person, to a Zora, which is a fish person, to a Goron, which is a person that rolls up into a ball. Or, of course, the one that Alex is probably miming right now, the Mask from the series. The Mask, who, of course, as we well know, is called the Big-Headed Killer for murdering a bunch of people with his cartoon antics.
I mean,
Well-
that is definitely a really cool thing, especially if you think about any of the different types of mythologies that they get wrong with it. But it's like, oh, it gives you the power of a god or power of this, that, and the other. I mean, they do confirm in a lot of different things that how powerful he is, but Death Battle probably sum it up the best, where they explain that his powers literally aren't to heal, it's just to say no to damage. His powers aren't to basically do whatever he wants, because that he has the power to do whatever he wants. Instead, it's he can literally make anything happen so long as he deems it hilarious or at least somewhat comical, which technically makes him similar to that of a trickster god. Not necessarily gaining the power from a specific trickster god that we're not going to mention because I know a lot of fans of the mask would get upset if I said it. But he
Because
does have
it's wrong.
He does have power of a trickster god. Not necessarily saying that he is one, not necessarily saying that he gains it from one. I'm just saying That is the best category of it. He has toonish capabilities, he has mischievous powers, and literally, his powers are literally decided based on what he finds funny, which all of those categories make sense. I will say though, a mask that practically makes you that powerful is definitely one of the more interesting types of ones that we can have.
However, it's also, I would say, technically a cursed item.
Oh, absolutely.
If we go by the comic books as opposed to the one good movie and the movie we don't talk about, and the cartoon series that I kind of liked. I liked it. In the comic books, it also brought about the worst of you in normal life. It kind of transformed you into your mask-based persona. And oddly enough, also talked to you to try and put it back on.
This is kind of interesting, actually, because I was actually talking to you about this, the two of you, a while back. I've only seen the two movies, the good one, and it's kind of interesting because I'm not going to mention the other one. It's kind of interesting because I saw both of them, and then I didn't see the I didn't read the comics and I didn't see the TV show, but then I read up a lot of the lore from the comics, and I read up a couple of different things from the comics and loads of different things about the powers that he has. And I had to say, like, there were so many things that they didn't even touch on, obviously, the films, because there's so much stuff to go over. But yeah, it is more of a cursed item, but it still does give them powers. But yes, it's a cursed item. Maybe at some point we might do a podcast on cursed items, but for now, I still think that it's not only a really decent mention, to be fair, it's also like probably one of the more perplexing ones, because it doesn't necessarily have a downside in the same way as like, oh, if you have it, then your physical state gets weaker. It's more based on the mental health rather than the physical health aspect, because it starts waning on the person, and technically when it takes over, you're not even technically you anymore, or at least if you are, you're the id of your own self. You're potentially as you said, the worst parts of yourself.
I think it says in the book, it brings apart the part of you that you don't show the world, essentially.
Yeah. Which, I don't know. That's actually a good question for all of you. For all of you, do you think if the mask worked on you, do you think that you'd ever want to put it on, knowing what it could do?
That's a difficult one, because it would be ultimately cool, and one of the good things about the cartoon series is that when it's put on other people, the results are hilarious. Like when he puts it on his psychologist and he becomes
Ipkisium psychosis.
He just goes around on a pogo stick, quote unquote, curing people, but putting them in straitjackets and bonking them on the head with a hammer.
Wedging them into straitjackets.
Wow.
Yes. See, that's funny, but in reality, it's like I've got. I don't know if you know this, but I have a dark side. I don't like the dark side. Sometimes, when I'm past the salt, I don't say thank you. It tears me apart inside. No, but I'd rather not, because that. It opens up the deepest recesses of the human soul, and I'm not sure. Even if I took off the mask, I knowing, what I'm actually deeply capable of would probably really mess me up. It certainly messes up, the main character of the comics. That's as much as I'll say without spoiling it. It's he's not okay.
Thing is, though, I would also say that if I was going to do it, okay, well, admit the miniseries and the series that follows that, bad things happen to the main character that uses the mask usually. But there have been times when the mask has done good. Believe it or not, as strange as that sounds, the mask has done good for people who, not even in a global sense or even just in an individual sense, it has helped people. In one of the stories, it helps. I'm pretty sure it's a girl. I remember vaguely it helps a girl and a father essentially come together.
Oh.
I think I remember that being very good. The fact that the mask, as evil as it usually is, as quote unquote, it does do good occasionally with the right people.
Ah, but Sam, the question is, would you put it on knowing what it could potentially show the world and potentially what it could do to you?
I would. I would want to at least see the demons that were within me. The
I
very
mean,
least then
you
I can.
might not even get to see it because not all people who wear it remember what happened to them.
That is true. There was the guy who thought he was just having weird dreams
Exactly.
or had schizophrenia.
Yeah.
Or it could be like who's the guy? It's Walter, the giant brick of a man who just puts it on but it doesn't work. Like,
Yeah.
he is just all id, so he's like, oh, that can't do anything.
Oh no.
I always thought that scene. It was like you supposed to be. Oh, it's because he's like always is honest with himself and is always completely id all of the time, so the mask has nothing to work with. Whereas
No, I was meant.
I always thought it's because his face was too big.
No. I always thought it was because he didn't actually have an id.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
no,
heard-
like
I
in
heard
the, in
that.
the in the in the cartoon, that's why it stopped working when Stanley Ipkiss began to act like the mask, was because he actually reached into his id and became the id, whereas the mask had nothing then to show the world. But with Walter, it's because he doesn't actually have a child, quote unquote, self to bring out, or doesn't have anything because he is just all ego, or it's either ego or super
That's
ego.
kind of interesting.
It's one of those
really.
two.
I mean, that's kind of interesting to really sort of have a concept where it's like that. I mean, it's similar to where you have the lasso of truth, because this is another one actually. We'll go on to magical item. Is the lasso of truth? Anyone who's bound by it has to speak the truth. But one of my favorite moments is to create a pact between the three. Both all three of them, Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman, all have to hold the lasso of truth and state who they are. And Wonder Woman says, I am Diana Prince, but I am just known as Diana, Princess of Themyscira. And then you then have Superman. He says, my name is Clark Kent as a human, but I am actually a Kryptonian from another world that was destroyed. My name is Kal-El. And then it just goes over to Batman and goes, I am Batman. And then they go, is that it? I'm thinking. And and it's then that moment where Batman realizes that his true self is him. And they actually do state that there's only a few people that the lasso of truth doesn't work on, because either some people are pure honesty, or some people literally can't. I think it's like either Hephaestus, the person who makes it, or it's no, I don't think Hephaestus makes it. I think he's the one who makes the
It makes the
bands.
weaponry.
He makes the weaponry. He doesn't make that. But it's like Ares is supposed to be like, quote unquote, the god of truth or the god of war or whatever. And in certain versions, Ares can't be affected by it. But there's another reason why, because eventually they actually say certain gods are immune. It's only demigods and humans that can be affected by the lasso of truth. There's a load of different ones. Funny fact is, though, I think in one of them, Dr. Fate can't be affected by it because fate is truth. And therefore, when they try to bind the human who's wearing it, the helmet resists it because technically it's not the human who speaks, it's the helmet who speaks on the behalf of the human it's possessing. So it's technically two separate entities. And
also, isn't it empowered by the gods of order? So wouldn't that also make sense that because they are gods, essentially?
Yeah, exactly. Which brings us on to obviously like that helmet. But I guess really like that helmet is really cool and it's really interesting, but it's similar to the mask where it's kind of almost like a curse. Like it's considered a great honor to be the vessel for the helmet, but yeah, it's not all that. It grants you an incredible amount of powers, potentially more than the mask, or maybe potentially less, considering depending on how you see it. But it is still when you're wearing it, it technically almost wears you because it takes you for a ride. It uses your form to be able to imbue you with all of its power, but it is basically the driver.
I mean, that's really appropriate because it's a mask and it's, primarily based on identity, because you are concealing your identity or putting on a new identity by
Yeah.
wearing a mask. So it's like that paranoia of like, if I put on this mask, then I am losing my own identity, or the face that I'm putting on for the world.
That is kind of an
And
interesting way of seeing how, like, because we were talking about like it's weird how like there are so many different things that have red boots or red footwear that grant special abilities or wishes, and now we're talking about masks and how they grant abilities, if not almost ids or personalities of their own. Because it is that ancient tradition of technically when you put on a mask, you're someone else. You're, as you say, another personality, another identity. But there are some people who also wear masks so that they can have a different personality to show people. An interesting one of that is in a show called Seven Deadly Sins. They actually have it where there's this one guy who wears this iron mask all the time, and at one point you do actually see him with it off. Now they actually spoke to the guy who I can't remember the person's name. Basically, they spoke to the. I can't even speak now. They spoke to the person who wrote it. They spoke to the author, and they said the reason as to why they wear the mask is because they have two different lives. The life that they live as the king's guard and the king's personal set of pretty much like recon and assassination hit team, but also that he takes off the mask when he's just parading around and he is a completely different person, much softer, much kinder. But when he puts on the mask, it's work face. So that's kind of an interesting way that like you have the helmet of Dr. Fate, the mask from The Mask, and many other different types of styles of identity giving people different abilities. I mean, literally when Link wears those masks, as you said, I think, isn't it, they recognize him as one as well. Like, they actually see him as their own kind. Rather
No,
than...
because it's because the masks he wear are of specific people that have, like, given up, I don't want to say their soul, but have gifted him with the masks, either because he's...
transformed into,
Yeah,
that
like,
person, yeah.
Like, I think it's like Macau it's like the rocker for a band, which is the Zora band, and that's who you become. Or like the spirit of like this long dead Goron. He's like the grandfather, the one you help.
Oh my god, it's kind of like Avatar, like the blue thing. So like literally putting you into a body of someone else.
Yeah.
Piloting it around.
Similar to Possession, except from the opposite. It's the opposite of Possession, where you're actually taking on the form of another person.
Yeah.
Is it potentially necromancy?
No.
I like how immediately you hated that.
No, I mean that's immediately just wrong.
Someone will agree with me.
He's got his Zelda hat. He's put on his Zelda hat of learning, and it's like, no, this is not law.
Well, actually, flip. You're wrong.
Actually, you're wrong.
No, I meant as in you saying that to me, but yeah.
Just get my Zelda book of knowledge out.
I like that debate. Okay, so like, so we talked about that. I mean, so those are sort of all magical ones. I mean, something that has always interested me is also the concept of almost homeopathic concept as well, like in Marvel and in a couple of other like situations with, I think, in DC, when a character who has power bleeds on or their DNA is shared onto an object or an item or a weapon, it then gains similar attributes to that person's powers. One of which is actually Thor in the comic known as Unworthy Thor. He loses one of his arms and he bleeds all over the axe, like this axe that he has, because he's unworthy of Mjolnir. The axe actually gains the ability of generating and manipulating lightning.
I mean, Joe, I must say, you did say items, not weapons.
You're absolutely right, but this is where it comes right back around, my friend, because not only does it happen with that, but later on, the Uru, he gets an entire Uru metal prosthetic arm, which also has the same ability. One is to believe that either it's because that he's harnessing that power and it's just absorbing it because it's a magic mineral, a magic material, and also conductive. There we go. But also because that his blood would have at least have some kind of connection to it. Now, that's a hard stretch, yes, but there is also another one to go off of that. Someone uses the DNA of a speedster to be able to access the Speed Force. One time of which they actually used the blood of Wally West and siphon off some of his blood to then instill the power of the Speed Force in a suit. This person is none other than Deathstroke. Slade Wilson himself. He absorbs the Speed Force and uses some of his DNA to implant it into a suit, and he uses it to be able to access the Speed Force and travel back in time to attempt to save his son from dying. So, that is where I was sort of going with that. Blood infusion. Now, we obviously use this a lot in Animite Tales, where you can blood transfuse an object so you can instill your powers or a fraction or even just the attribute of your power into something. Electrokinetic, electric-based objects, items, or weaponry. You have nature. Well, now this object can basically be implanted with a specific task. You stab it into an object and it'll then start growing things naturally. You turn into fire? Cool. Now you have a weapon that no one else can touch. Or clothing that is immune to your own blaze, meaning that you no longer have to worry about burning your clothes whenever you turn into a fireball. Pardon me. So, I don't know, like, that is kind of a way of explaining that. For you guys, are there any other sort of examples, either making them up on the spot or even from any other sources? Do you guys...
Yes.
Go on.
I want to talk about... Yeah, go on.
I mean, Alex, do you want to go first? Do you want to go first? Because there is one...
You had the big... Yes!
Sorry. There is one directly related to what Thing just said. Joe just said.
Good old Thing.
Yeah, Thing. the Omnitrix from Ben 10. Which when it touches another alien, can gain its DNA.
You know what? I knew you were going to say this one.
So the wielder of it can become, said...
Literally become
species.
Those aliens, yeah. I like that one. And this is one of the reasons why I said... This is why I said empowerment items rather than just nothing. Rather than just magic. Because it's not a magic item, it's actually science and technology. But yes, it does take the DNA and it turns you into something. I love this thing. Can we just have some appreciation for a watch that turns you into things? And then, not only this, but it's probably one of the first ever Cartoon Network shows that actually further went and built on its own lore. Like, can we just appreciate that for a second? Like, an actual Cartoon Network show, a show for kids that actually had its own lore that was building upon it. I mean, maybe some other shows came before it, like some actual Cartoon Network original shows that came before it, but I feel like this is the first one that actually not only did it well, but also further expanded upon it. Now, I don't know, I quite like it. I quite like the concept, especially considering that there's also the theoretical possibility of, if there's a mutant of that species, could you also then get the ability of that mutant of that species' powers?
If you have it in the, if you put it in the DNA thing, then sure. I mean, it would have to be exactly that DNA, wouldn't it? Because it's like...
Yeah,
you could have varieties,
You'd have to touch it.
I think isn't it like the Omnitrix itself has to actually be in contact with the
Oh yeah, that's what I mean. It actually touched the watch.
Yeah.
As we've seen, and even then, as we saw with, what was the ghost one called?
Ghost Freak.
Ghost Freak, yeah.
All like they can actually somehow survive inside the watch. So magic. They could be. I'm classifying that as total magic.
It's
The
not.
DNA.
This is the thing. It's not magic, and this is how it's explained. It's because that every single essence of their DNA is technically a part of the same living thing. So technically, it's any strand of its DNA is basically a survival mechanic. It's basically almost like its entire consciousness, if not its soul, is directly linked to its DNA. So it's
And it's yeah, and they retain a lot of levels of their personality and stuff as well. There's even one episode where all of the contained aliens of the Watch turn on Ben,
I
because they're
didn't
like
see that
sick
one.
of being used. Yeah, that's what it's like in the later series where he's grown up a little bit, and like the Watch is malfunctioning, and basically their sentience in the Watch is going haywire, and they has to go, and he always has to go and sacrifice himself because they're just sick of doing his bidding and they want out of the Watch and to be
Damn.
their own thing. But that's impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah, really, it's really messed up. I mean, they have like another reason they found a way around it, because otherwise there wouldn't be any Ben 10 show. But that was an interesting concept to come up. So yeah, they're all technically still sentient in that Watch.
I thought I didn't know. All I remember is at one point it almost explodes. Like it almost. I think it was like it was the movie one where he couldn't actually use the watch, or you could use it like 3 times.
Oh
or else
yeah,
it was going.
So he had
It was going to explode and kill people.
Yes,
like,
so he
destroy
had a
the
certain
world.
amount of times because basically it was going into an overload because he used it too many times, and it was this thing of it was going to explode, and not. I think it was either the fact that the explosion was powerful enough to just destroy the planet that he was on, but it was more of obviously, look, we need to save the kid, and they get it off of him, and then they find the guy who can fix it, and then that's when I think he's like, oh, I just gave you a couple of extra upgrades. And he literally just like gives them that gigantic alien as the final end to it or something. I thought that was a pretty good. That was also a pretty decent film. Like I thought that was.
Yes, it
good.
was. That was a good film.
Yeah.
I like that. I don't care what anyone says.
Hashtag we're definitely not fans of Ben 10, you guys. Like, don't ask.
Hashtag no.
Quick, hide the merch.
Hide the merch.
Hide my forearms alarm clock.
It's that. I don't know if that's true or not, but I want it to be real.
But I should say back in the day when I was like 6. Whenever Alex was only in there, when Alex was only 400 and I was about 10.
Yeah. When Alex was
Maybe
roughly around about in the in the early 3 digits.
Yes.
The 4th earliest 3 digit. Sorry, Alex.
Yeah, that's.
Where am I? Where are you?
Yes. So yeah, Sam. I'd consider that one to be a good one since all of us talked about it.
And it's like I can't stop thinking about the Ice King actually now with the crown. That's also a cursed object, but it is also a blend of magic and technology. Like
Yeah. I mean, is that Dice King? Did you say?
no, Ice King from
Ice King.
Adventure Time.
I was gonna say I will let if Sam if you know Adventure Time, I will back down for a second here because I don't know anything about Adventure Time. This is a no Joe zone.
This is.
Well, I mean, spoiler town.
Nope.
No, but oh well. I guess I have the floor here. I mean, the show's been over for a while now, so I'll spoil a few things. But basically, the Ice King, we think at first is just this crazy wizard with ice powers who, kidnaps princesses and is just a general awful person, But then we find out that actually he is a scientist named Simon who has found an artifact known as the Ice Crown, which was created by an ice elemental who wanted to extend his lifespan, but before the world ended for the first time. The world keeps ending, by the way, because of wars and meteorites and a lot of stuff's going on. But basically, he basically tries to like get this crown to amplify his powers and stop this meteorite from hitting way back in the past. But unfortunately, he gives it to his apprentice instead, who only imprints on it that he wants to be like the ice elemental, like he wants to be the Ice King. and that doesn't go wrong. And it just like basically just takes on his craziness and his obsession instead of actually doing its purpose. Fast
Oh,
forward
okay.
thousands of years later, and this crown has, the last remnants of the ice elemental's apprentice inside it, which is crazy and confused. And it will give you the ice powers and give you incredible ice powers and virtual immortality, but it turns you into, a crazy version of the ice elemental, the ice king. And Simon puts this on, and he can't control it, and he eventually just goes mad. And it turns into kind of an allegory for Alzheimer's. Like, it's a gradual process. Like, the more power he gains, the less sanity he has. And it is a technologically made thing, but it also is imbued with magical powers. And you can actually go inside the crown and find that, in the midst of circuits and various mental things, there is remnants of, the ice elemental's apprentice. There are remnants of Simon, still locked in there.
Damn.
And
Okay.
yeah, it's really, yeah, you want to talk about like Cartoon Network shows that build on their lore. There's a good example for you right there. But yeah, the Ice Crown is wonderful because well, I mean, it's not wonderful because it's destroyed so many lives, but it's just an interesting bit of lore where it is like this insanely powerful item that has all of the powers of the ice elemental that made it, but very little control over it. Basically, the new Ice King, who is Simon, uh, basically just wanders around confused and alone most of the time,
I think
not really understanding what's going on.
Aw.
I think probably one of the most interesting things is when wondrous items can be created in not only a crossbred form of magic and technology, or powers and technology, or powers and magic, or etc. etc. Any of those different combinations, or all three of them. It's also when they can be used for storytelling. As I said, with the red slippers or the red shoes at the end of Wizard of Oz, they're more used for storytelling to end the story, but in this, it's to further the lore. So yeah, yeah, it's not that concept of it's wonderful because it's a good thing. It's wonderful because it's an incredible way to tell a more not necessarily believable, but more heartfelt story, more
It certainly is.
connectable
I
story.
mean, Simon's story is definitely one of my favorite stories in Adventure Time, and it is just quite heartbreaking. Like how this brilliant scientist, through no fault of his own, just degenerates into this sort of comedy, sad character. It's yeah, it's heartbreaking, and that's not even the end of the item story either. That's a lot I didn't actually mention that's after that, which is real spoiler territory right there. I mean, I've spoiled quite a lot.
I think I think something else that
Ah.
like I wanted to sort of bring up in the terms of not only storytelling but also items that are actually kind of interesting. Fractal items that grant abilities or powers. We were actually talking about wishes. I'ma bring up the biggest wish granting items ever, the Dragon Balls from the series Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT, or Dragon Ball Super. Um, Literally, they are seven orangey sort of crystal orbs that all have stars in them, and they once collected all seven of them, and a specific phrase is stated. They summon a dragon for, I think it's supposed to be no longer than about a minute or maybe 3 or 5 minutes or something. And basically, the way that it works is the dragon can grant one wish uh, with almost zero consequence to the wish. And it's like you can bring the dead back to life, you can have a ton of money, you can have it where everyone forgets your existence, or you can have it where everyone knows your existence. All of these different things, and the wish is whatever whatever you want. There are only certain limitations. In fact, one of them I think they state early on is people can only be brought back once. However, they actually state with a later iteration of it, another dragon can bring back anyone as many times as they want. However, each wish can only bring back one person at a time, whereas the original one can bring back either one person or it can bring back an entire planet of people. So there's all sorts of different ways that they can do it, and there's one where it's like the original dragon can can only grant one wish. Then they go to another planet where the wish orbs originate, and they can grant 3 wishes. But then there's another one where later on they boost the original dragon's abilities, and so the Earthling wish granting dragon, can actually grant 2 wishes, but then has the problem of can only bring back people who have never been brought back before. So there's a load of different weird and wacky things that happen throughout the series, and it does wishes, as probably you guys are already starting to guess because I keep bringing up wishes, like being able to bring that back the dead can sometimes then create this thing of, oh well, we just need to wish and that's it. We just need to get the wish orbs and then wish for these things to happen. And they do become not only the main plot of the series, but also the big plot hole of the MacGuffin. But instead of being a plot hole, they are just the MacGuffin, because they do state the wish orbs cannot destroy a being that has the power to destroy a planet, because theoretically they have more power. They have more power than the dragon itself, so they can't kill or destroy them. They can send them to another location in the universe, but they can't do anything like instantly kill them or make them vanish from reality. They can do all sorts of different things. There's only certain limitations and rules that they can do. I don't know. I don't know if you guys have got any other ideas of like powerful items such as that. But like, do you guys have any opinions on the Dragon Balls or any kind of wish granting items like that?
I mean, to be honest, I like Dragon Balls. Yes, it is a MacGuffin, but it's a hard-earned MacGuffin because you have to go and assemble all these balls, and like they scatter the moment the wish that is granted, right? Like they're not just all there.
You have to find and collect all 7, and you have to have the phrase. In the Namekian one, you actually have to know the exact password and speak its native tongue. So you literally need to know an alien language and an alien language password. But yeah, normally you have to find all 7, collect them. They all have to be within a very small vicinity of each other, literally next to each other. You have to know the phrase, speak it, and then state your wishes. Afterwards, all of the Dragon Balls shoot up into the sky and separate throughout the entire planet. And even if you were able to collect them instantly, they turn to stone for 1 whole year.
Well, there you go. You see, it's much harder than just like going out and finding it. And this is like the best encryption for witchcraft granting, I think, rather than putting on some Wellingtons, which is like the easiest thing in the world. Actually, that's actually kind of good, because if they didn't have all of that stuff, because it's consequence-free wishes, if they didn't have all of that build-up to it, then it would be too easy to get. Whereas like these wish-granting items that you just access them and you have your wish, they usually have like ironic consequences.
Like monkey's paws.
Yeah, like monkey's paws. Yeah, monkey's paws.
Yeah,
that's like, because the easier it is to get those wishes, the more ironic and terrible the consequences are. Whereas, like, you have to jump through so many hoops to get these Dragon Balls, and even then, there's like tons of people that are fighting over them for you as well, and you've got the year-long cooldown. That is actually really difficult to get these. You have to really want this wish, and really know what you're doing.
Yes, Sam. I noticed that you're trying to get on in. You got anything to say about this subject, or have you got a new subject?
Just wish things, or of cool magical items?
Anything in general, man. If you want to add to something or add something to this.
I just thought of another anime special item that I'm not sure. I know you haven't seen this, Joe, but Alex has.
Okay.
Welcome to Demon School Rumikun.
Oh yeah, you talk about the ring, aren't you?
Yeah, to talk about the ring. Because in the anime, Rumikun is essentially a human. I mean, he is a human who gets sent to the demon world, where he tries to learn pretty much gets taught in a school of demons, and they all have magic and wings and etc. And he has none of those things. So his uncle, I mean, quote unquote uncle, is like the king, is like one of the highest demon lords called Solomon, and he some kind of grants him this ring that allows him to steal magic from others and use it.
Okay, that's
So he
pretty
does.
cool.
So he can't actually generate magic on his own. The ring actually needs to, like, the ring actually gets like a shadow form erupts from it and reaches out to try and steal magic from others. And it pretty much weakens them to the point of almost dying, as it shows in the anime. If they're not that strong, if they don't have that much magic in them.
I mean, that's why, like, it fed on Solomon, who's like one of the most powerful demons in all of hell, and it was just like nothing. It's just like gets a little snack and is full.
Yeah.
So that's why he's able to hide it so well. It's just, he just lets it snack on him for a little bit, and it's no big deal.
See,
Whereas,
I love that
as
concept.
it showed with Alice Asmodeus, it was just he just went blue in the face and fell down and looked like he was going to become a corpse in the next 3 seconds.
So I was looking up something because I needed to know the exact functions for it, and I still don't fully know how this works. But so you might recognize this. I don't know if you read the manga or if you just watched the anime, but Brew from Soul Eater.
Not a clue. You're going to have to give me more specific here. Which one's she? Or he?
No, it's actually the object in question. So Brew it looks like a cube. It's a magical item. It's basically, I'm still reading up about it, but according to this, it's the abilities and most fearsome power of Brew is its ability to combine and merge two things into one and granting it power. When used by Noah, the resulting combination with himself and his ant monsters enable him to fight on par with Ashura, basically just a massive demon god. However, Brew also has other functions, including amplification of soul wavelengths, so basically just natural powers, or even having the ability to increase or empower someone to grant them their racial abilities, like the Lines of Sansu for Reapers. It as well as accelerating or maturing aging. So basically, it can potentially just completely wreck things that don't have immortality. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because it's used as a core to power ridiculously powerful things, or people use it to power themselves up temporarily. The item in on itself, however, apparently has almost infinite uses because it's either a battery or it's just a very powerful artifact that in on itself can just amplify anyone to such ridiculous lengths. If I'm remembering this correctly, because I'm no longer looking at the research materials, wiki, it's made by a wizard known as Abon, and Abon is basically the quote-unquote most powerful wizard in that universe, and he creates this artifact. Lord knows why, I have no idea why he makes it, but he makes this artifact, and it's supposedly the most powerful object that anyone could get their hands on, because anyone is able to use it. It just can potentially kill the person who uses it, be they mortal or not strong enough to basically continue on. In fact, I think one of the people who uses it actually does end up dying, regardless of how powerful they are.
Oh,
I mean, it just looks like a holocron to me.
It's a really basic thing. It's just a metal, mechanical looking box, and it something vague magic.
you know what? I think that adds to it really, because like it's sort of like, what is that one, Indiana Jones and the last movie of Indiana Jones, where it's like the Holy Grail and stuff, and it looks like it's the goblet of a carpenter. It's not the great big fancy thing. It's just a little box, and it contains all of this incredible power.
It's because it's that thing of like it's because of that everyone thinks that, like, oh yeah, Jesus was living it up, and so the Holy Grail is supposed to be like, oh, it's the king's cup, the king of king's cup, or the god's cup, and it's literally, yeah, but he chose what would be the Holy Grail, and what better than to choose something humble rather than something overly flashy. I love that. That's probably one of the best plot twists ever. I love that when I first ever watched that. That was the best
thing.
thing.
There's a magical item right there.
Yeah.
It gives you immortality. Well, temporary immortality, I guess.
Temporary immortality, because it gives you the ability to heal if you drink from it, but then you gain immortality. But you lose your immortality if you leave the site. But either way, if you drink it, you at least gain your life back if you're about to die. I don't know.
To be honest, it just made me. Now you brought up something vague magic. It just makes me think of the Triforce now, which is something vague magic.
Yeah, something vague magic. I mean, I'm trying to think of another one which was actually. I mean, I'm not a big fan of vague magic because low fantasy does often do vague magic. Game of Thrones, but it's okay. I can say that now. Everyone's upset with the ending anyway. But
I think they have really high magic. I mean, they managed to transport Starbucks cups right into the medieval ages. I'd say that's quite impressive.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
I mean, either way, I mean, I wanted to actually say one item that actually completely skipped my mind until now. Or, well, not one item, a specific set of items. Did anyone, speaking of Cartoon Network shows, did anyone ever see Shaolin Showdown?
Damn right I did.
No, this is one that was passing me by.
Alex, if not everyone, you are all missing out. It is an animated series, literally based around what we're talking about now, magical items based off of either idioms or specific phrases, because you got stuff like Falcon's Eye, Eagle's Eye, Sword of the Storm, all of these different things, Reversing Mirror, all these different things. Basically, they are items that, for whatever reason, have special magical properties. And obviously, like in anime, if not at least animated fashion, they are items that do not work unless if the user outwardly states the name of the item. So they actually have to speak the name of the item to activate it. But upon doing
Shengong Wu.
Shengong Wu, there we go.
Don't forget the name of them, the Shengong Wu.
The Shengong Wu. And they would have different abilities. Like, for instance, one of them is the Fist of Tamigong, which basically is like, you basically have the ability to punch an incredible strength. Anything that you punch, basically, the fist is so powerful that anything that it hits is supposed to be, it breaks anything that it hits. But also, whatever you hit, basically, it's like as if you hit it with a massive amount of super strength. They have almost a lot of them have very silly names, but one of the other ones, the best one that I wanted to actually put in, is the Reversing Mirror. Anything that the Reversing Mirror does, it causes effect for. It literally reverses its effect. So the Fist of Tabigong, they actually say, if you used it against it, it would basically mean that it would then suddenly be super bouncy, so you could use it like a space hopper. But the effect is only temporary, but the effect can last as long as you're still using the item after it was reversed. Once you cease to use it, once it was reversed, it then goes back to its original form. The Reversing Mirror is actually used again, quite interestingly, because there's a ghost who was originally a witch, who basically was a very powerful witch, but the way that they do it is they use a special serpent's tail that, when using it, you can not only fly, but become intangible to anything that you pass through. But they use this where she holds either the Reversing Mirror or the serpent's tail, and they use the Reversing Mirror. The witch then becomes no longer an intangible ghost and becomes physical again, and that's how they undo her magical sealing that turned her into a harmless spirit. So, that's kind of interesting. I don't know if you have anything to add to this particular one, Sam. Like, if there were any ones that caught your eye?
I mean, the one I can always remember is the one that something Spicer, the technological genius guy, always used.
Jack.
Was just like the Jack.
Yeah.
He just had like a rod that made him like a monkey boy,
Oh.
which pretty much just granted him a tail, and I think like enhanced acrobatics. I thought
Yes.
that's the one. That was the one he always used for whatever reason, and I just love that for some. Even though he could fly,
Was it called the
Even though
Staff of Wukong? Because it was supposed to be like a monkey staff, and it was no, I don't think they were that clever.
might have been. I swear that was. I think it's just called the monkey staff. I'm looking it up.
It
now,
might
right?
actually just be called the monkey staff. Some of them are actually kind of interesting names, like the Fist of Tabigong. What was it? There's another one.
Oh, Wuya.
Say again, sorry.
Wuya was the witch, by the way.
Oh yeah, Wuya.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, just looking up now because I was curious what the actual. I can't remember what it was called, but now Jack Spicer. Yeah, now I know.
But yeah, there was some incredible like different items in there. That okay, if anyone's interested in special magical items, that is the show. That has some incredible story. It is very overtly comical, but it does have quite an interesting expansion on its own lore, and I'd say it's got quite a decent set of storylines and plot threads. Also, it's a show that actually progresses the story rather than they do a season of events that just keep doing things that don't really lot to anything. It's like, yeah, this is season 5 and they're doing the same thing over and over again, and maybe a new villain shows up every now and again. They actually do progress the plot.
Are you still thinking about Korra?
No, I was actually going to talk about Simpsons, but okay.
Oh.
Yeah,
We're not getting into Korra. We're not getting into that. We're going to move on now, because that has no magical items. However, I'm actually going to say another one.
Go on.
And then I'll let you guys talk about any of the other ones that you want. The One Ring. There, I said it. We're done.
Hey, we said it. Okay, we can go home now, everyone.
All right.
We said it.
Bye, guys. See you later. The One Ring. If people don't know what it is, it's from Lord of the Rings. It is the one ring to rule them all. It is whoever wears the ring can apparently, I believe, if I'm remembering this correctly, literally control anyone else who has any of the multitude of power rings that were made by Sauron and Celebrimbor, the two ancient elven smiths. Basically, the One Ring has that ability, but any other mortal creature that wears it who isn't, or specifically at least hobbits and humans anyway, who wear the ring, become invisible. That's it. Although anyone who wears it are 100% susceptible to being able to be seen by any of the ring wraiths, the servants who were eventually corrupted by Sauron's power rings. And they were all humans who were corrupted by the power rings. But either way, nonetheless, there we go. So we got that out of the way. That is probably the biggest one, in all honesty.
It also has potential to drive you insane with power.
It does corrupt you, as Sauron's will eventually corrupt you, and basically it can eventually force you to go towards to Sauron's lair and then give him the ring, which can then bring him back to life. The only way that you can destroy it is by how it was forged, by basically casting it into the fires of Mount Doom, which, in all honesty, it isn't the fires of Mount Doom, it's the lava of Mount Doom. Sorry, I had to get that out of the way. We all knew it had to be said.
Nice. I mean, to be honest though, like, does it sound as poetic, say, cast into the lava of Mount Doom?
Yeah.
No.
Fair enough, but I just wanted to get it out there.
It's more poetic
It
for it
is
to be
more
the fires of
poetic.
Mount Doom.
It is more poetic.
Yes.
And actually, technically, if we're also going to go on that, I assume that he didn't forge it in the... Well, I assume that he didn't forge it in the lava either. I'm just saying, they could just say cast it into the heat of Mount Doom, but then again, it also wouldn't make sense. It's like, oh, it's really hot. Oh, look, the ring is melted now on the chain.
No offense, but how dare you mock the great J.R.R. Tolkien's classic work?
I'm not mocking it. Dare I say, those
Question it
films-
then.
Okay, fair enough. I was questioning it.
Hey, this is not J.K. Rowling's vision for Lord of the Rings.
I will get to Harry Potter. I was about to
Oh
say
god,
garbage because a lot of the magical items are not all that interesting. But I actually forgot that there are some amazing magical items in Harry Potter.
that's true.
I forget
mean,
myself.
Like the car.
I say this as a fan of the series. It sucks, but it does have some interesting concepts in there that kind of taken from mythology in real life, but like actually expanded upon a bit more, which is neat.
I'll get into that if we actually bring it up, but if not, before I bring it back up, do you? I know that Sam or you have been bursting, but specifically, I've been feeling that Sam has been bursting for another one.
Sam's really.
I mean, nope. I will
Really?
allow Alex to
Uh,
just to give the first blow here.
I've literally just run up. Well, you said before that we couldn't have the Necronomicon, which doesn't technically.
Wait, it does grant powers because in Ash versus Evil Dead Ash versus Jason versus Freddy.
I mean,
it
also
grants
technically,
Freddy.
it is a magical item anyway. Regardless,
Yeah.
as I said, as we already has discussed this, really, I don't mind us talking about it, but yes, I actually would like to know some of the more things of the Necronomicon. For those who don't know about the Necronomicon, what is it, Alex?
Oh, well, it is the Book of the Dead, which is taken from like H.P. Lovecraft, but expanded more on the Evil Dead series, where its pages, detail all of the beasts of hell, and also open the gateway to the Deadite dimension, which is a horrible place, full of evil and pain and misery, and the evil dead come out and cause chaos basically and take over the world potentially. But yeah, it also has the ability to close its portal as well because it's a safety mechanism as well. But the idea is that by reading its words that are written on pages of human skin, I think. I don't know if it's like I know the
Similar
cover
to
is
the
made
Book
of
of the
human
Damned
Yeah.
in other.
And written in human blood. Don't forget that.
written
Oh
in
yes,
human
yes.
blood. Yeah.
Who could forget
Yeah.
such things? Okay, so full disclaimer. I
also-
originally thought that the Necronomicon was actually something to do with the old ones or or Cthulhu. Call
it
of
is.
Cthulhu. Oh, okay. Never
It
mind.
is, but it's been reappropriated for the Evil Dead and this Ash versus the Evil
mean-
Dead and this whole series.
I mean, I
They
should
expect them to
say,
make the powers then.
thankfully enough, because of comic books, we can't say it is technically affiliated with Cthulhu because Ash vs. Evil Dead is still in the same universe as Henry West, the Reanimator, which is an H.P.
yeah, that is
Lovecraft
true.
story.
Yeah, but that was like reappropriated as well to be for modern times, whereas it was like set in the Victorian era in H.P. Lovecraft.
I
So it's
kind of like spell books, though. I don't know about you guys, but I kind of like the concept of grimoire spell books and also ancient like spells that like open other dimensions and other locations that we don't even know ourselves.
it's knowledge.
I mean-
It's just like the forbidden knowledge.
It also did allow you to time travel, as we did see in Ash vs. the Army of Darkness.
It can also summon minions if you like. I mean, in a really horrible, gross way. If you just take off its cover and just meld it to some poor soul's face, they just like spit out minions. Jesus, I'm just explaining it. I'm like, oh god, that's awful.
And what else? Oh, and it can grant you, as we saw in Ash versus Freddy versus Jason, it can grant you the powers of the demon Freddy Krueger, but in the real world.
Oh yeah, so it's not like a dream world. It's not bound by
So
the dream
basically,
world.
you get the dream world rules, but in the real world.
Yes,
Damn.
and it, as we well know, is what brought Jason Voorhees back to undead status, which we can all agree is great. Thank you, Friday the 13th Part 8, or Jason Goes to Hell, for saying that.
Okay. I
True
don't
story.
I don't know what your beef is with it, but I guess we'll move on.
No, I like
so-
that idea.
So What's the one that you were wanting to talk about, Sam?
Well, I apologize, Alex, for going on a rant about the Necronomicon for year one.
No,
it's a
this is a
really-
discussion, mate. Honestly, I mean,
Only-
I
only-
like it.
Only because I know just so much more about it. Because I've read the comics and shit. Or because I just know a lot about it in this regard.
To be honest, I don't know enough about it, but I do enjoy the concept of, hey, there's this book of like massively forbidden knowledge, or hey, there's this forbidden knowledge, or these items or specific things. But one of my most interesting ideals is powers or even secrets or even the ability to access them doesn't necessarily need to be an item. It can be literally a book. Because as we always hear, knowledge is power. What if knowledge actually manifests itself in a form of powers? So one of the reasons why grimoires are so interesting to me is because it's literally that form of, imagine if your creativity or even just the words off of the page create for you.
It is kind of creepy as well because it's like out of your control. Like normally you have full control of the book, but this is like the Necronomicon. It's literally a living book. It's made out of people, and it can just like move around a little bit and literally just graft itself onto people.
Similar to the books from Apotheca from or Apocrypha from Skyrim.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, I guess that's a similar concept. That's also really cool as well. Just like, ugh.
And it can, depending on which universe, can actually physically, like vocally talk to you.
What, the Necronomicon?
Yeah.
That's so cool.
I mean, I should say, in the Marvel Zombies universe, it vocally communicates with Ash about how the Marvel Zombies are bad.
Oh, no way.
No way.
And how he actually makes Deadites to fight. He asks the Necronomicon to make Deadites to fight the Marvel Zombies, and then Hulk.
This series keeps on giving. Like, this is awesome.
And then Hulk whenever they manage to flee that universe, Hulk uses its pages to wipe his bottom essentially.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh dear. I mean,
thank you, Marvel Zombies.
I've never really seen Marvel. I've never really, I guess the best way that I could say it is I've never really been able to see Hulk in the same light after I watched him in two separate death battles on the YouTube show Death Battle, and he went at first he went up against Doomsday, and then recently he went up against the Dragon Ball Super, or technically the Dragon Ball Z. Well, technically it is the Dragon Ball Super version. Character Broly. And they explained that his powers come from an alternate dimension because gamma radiation is from technically a form of hell in the Marvel universe.
No.
That is actually one of the things that has happened. And he apparently gets his power from the one below all, which is the opposite of the one above all.
I'm still calling no.
Anyway, so Sam, what was your thing?
I mean, Marvel also made him in the Ultimate Universe, made him so he was like a lustful dude who wanted to have sex with everything, and was a cannibal. Marvel can do wrong many times.
Yes,
that's a myth.
Let it happen. Never again.
So Sam, what is this other item that we've almost been hype mongering at this point?
Well, to be honest, I do have two magical items.
Okay.
One I should go with first, from of course the classic cartoon series Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
Oh my god, yes. Okay.
As a character I did make once for this game, I shall say his name, Presto.
Ah, yes.
In the cartoon there is a wizard called Presto, and he gets his powers from his magical hat. However, because he's not a great wizard, he essentially has to try. It's either through rhyming or he just says it. It pretty much has to try and pull things from his magical hat. Sometimes it works. Often it's used humorously, like whenever he tries to make hamburgers and just makes a cow.
Okay.
Like that. But you know, I think he had to be probably a bit more specific to use the magical item of being able to pull anything from a hat.
Yeah.
Like as we saw, like he can pull ropes and birds and essentially like fireballs. Pretty much anything if he's like if he's a wizardly enough about it.
Yeah, but he's
And
too low level at that point to actually
yeah,
control
he's a
it.
scrub.
That's
Yeah.
one hell of a cantrip hat.
Or, but of course, I have to. The other one I was going to mention, specifically because you said Grimoires, from the great Ox Venturers, Frisky and the Darkness, the book babies of Prudence the Warlock, who are who are books that have pretty much move about and have their own kind of like pretty much they're like dogs. These books, these
Oh,
grimoires, and that they lick and bite things, and they have great love for their master Prudence,
Okay, that's
and they
super cool.
and
that's
they
really
also can and they eat food, so they whenever there's any amount of meat about, they will just nom 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 nom.
oh,
Not
so
only
adorable.
terrifying, but also adorable.
Yeah.
And it was. That's why Frisky and the Darkness are great, great book babies.
I guess one of the coolest things that we've actually seen in the terms of magical special items in tabletop games going towards D&D. I really enjoy some of the ones that you guys have had in some of our tabletop games. Um, to mention a few, obviously we've had legions, obviously weapons. He has had an array or an array of weapons, but to move from weapons off to a specific side, we have actually had Cosmos's staff. Now, not necessarily a weapon, or potentially a weapon, but it does amplify her damage output. But really, it's actually supposed to be made to amplify her range. So Cosmos was the person who had nature manipulation and telekinesis, so she could control plant life, communicate with animals, and also manipulate the earth. Because of this, the staff would technically and could potentially help her build an island, which at the end of the campaign, not only does she pitfall a bunch of people, instantly killing them, proving how powerful she is by the end of it, she also at one point at the end of the campaign, we canonically stated that she used her powers to make and build a new island for herself and Aspen to live on, because they're kind of people who are more like introverts. They prefer their own type of lifestyle, more like either nomads, or I guess you could say more like, well, druids. They prefer to be surrounded with nature rather than people. Also, because the last time that like she was around people, a lot of bad things happened, and
Yeah.
she came with them, and a lot more bad things happened. Eventually, it was just like, no, I'm done with this. I'm gonna make my own island and basically use this staff to further amplify my powers. So that was one of them. Um, I mean, in a lot of the tabletop RPG ones, we usually have more weapons than we do items that grant powers, which is a bit of a shame. Obviously, we have power stones
Oh,
because
they create those rings that were, sadly they got stolen, but it was like a collaboration between Aspen and Cosmos, where we could we activated them. They were like plant-based rings, but infused with my bio boost powers.
yeah,
And we could remotely activate them with our powers of nature manipulation, and that would give other people our powers of bio boost. And just give them a massive boost in power, essentially.
yeah, temporarily boosting a specific person's strength based on a specific formula. Because I think you had to choose what boost it was.
Yeah.
But you'd be like, okay, so here's some strength boosting berries, here's some whatever. But it was a ring, and it was like, these rings once a day will grow a berry that when you pluck it off and eat the berry, you'll then, for like 1d4 of minutes, so between 1 to 4 minutes, you can basically have the power of super strength, super dexterity, or super constitution. So either you're more difficult to injure with super con, you're faster and harder to hit and more precise with super dex, or you're just able to hit harder and just have greater physical strength with obviously super strength. I really enjoyed that, to be honest. That was one of the cooler items that you guys were able to make.
I'm so upset that we couldn't get them back. But one day, maybe if we revisit, we could get those back. I miss
But
those so much.
another
I
one
miss
that
them.
was also kind of interesting was the adventures of Nathan and the Packed Pirates of the Eight Seas Villains campaign that you guys did. And I really enjoyed the one that you guys did where Karai had made... so she was an attuner, so she could literally attune people's powers from their blood and place them, and basically she could kind of program how the powers worked, literally like an enchanter. And she attuned the powers, and she literally made a little radar dish that was welded onto the top of the ship, and it would conduct and control wind, pressure, and lightning from an aerokinetics powers and an electrokinetics powers, so that any lightning that struck would create a barrier, and any wind that would attempt to hit the boat would create a powerful wind barrier and push the boat faster, using basically a bubble of pressurized air. So this basically meant that you were immune to storms whilst you were riding a storm out, and you used it to literally sail across an entire storm in on your own. There were many other different items that you guys made similar to that, but those are the two ones. The berry rings and that radar dish is probably some of the cooler ones that we've seen that aren't weapons necessarily. We've obviously had like clothing and armor that had special abilities and effects, but I think in all honesty those two were probably the best. As I was saying,
I mean,
go on.
you're clearly forgetting the gloves of Ned Zed the Jester Man.
Those
Oh,
those
of
were
course.
magic, and
And
they're based on an old system.
again, still one of the best empowering items that I think, dare say, it's ever been created in this system. Old as it may be.
To be fair, old basically just means now not legal, or at least if it was
Defunct.
legalized, it's now basically nowhere near as broken. But yes, back in the heyday, they were ridiculously overpowered. But even still, if we were to make them at the specific level that they actually technically could still be made, they would still be very powerful. Considering that the user, literally anything they mime, it literally becomes reality as an invisible force, object, creature, technically, if you pretended to ride or have a creature. Invisible weather, which was kind of interesting. And also invisible housing, which was brilliant.
Yes.
Literally anything you could mime could become a reality.
I should say the idea of it did come from Shaolin Showdown, wherein there was a character that was a mime who almost beat the Shaolin warriors simply by putting them inside a box, and them unable to understand the idea that they were stuck inside a box until they mimed themselves out of it, which was the one disadvantage of the gloves, wherein if you were clever enough and could perform just as well, you could use the mimes against him by miming a door, or miming a shield, or miming a blade to counteract a blade.
It's like reality manipulation. You basically just go along with the logic that they're miming as well, and you could just get rid of that. It's also almost like similar to like Detective Pikachu, where they're going along with Mr. Mime, and like he's trying to escape, and it's like they have to go through all of the logic of him miming an escape, including a car crash in slow motion.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
I've not seen Detective Pikachu, but I want to now.
I mean, I've been
It's
wanting
created
to for a
new
while. It looks good.
It's very very good. Although it's where everyone has a go at Mr. Mime for being creepy. That's one of the more funny scenes. The really creepy moments come from Ditto, and I'm not going to say any more from that. But like Ditto gives me nightmares. I truly.
I think Ditto has given at least someone a nightmare at some point. At least a few people have had a nightmare where a Ditto has been involved, or something similar to that of Ditto.
You just like you wake up one morning, you turn to your side, and Ditto's there where your wife should be.
You've completely swapped those two around. So the last real thing that I guess we could really talk about, in the terms of magical items or empowerment items, technology, was actually something that I thought you guys would actually probably be kind of interested in talking about, which is, so we've talked about magical items, magical objects, technological items that grant people powers. As I said with Animite Tales, we've got all sorts of different things thanks to blood transfusion, legendary blood, imbuement, even power stones, being that you can taint Animite crystals with the blood of a superhuman to create pseudo shards or single stones or power stones. To literally have these objects of stolen power. But something that we actually haven't spoken about yet is we've sort of touched on it about a few times, like magical items, obviously magical weapons previously, but I think something that we haven't actually spoken about that much in detail is we have all of these usual ones of granting a specific ability, granting a power. If you could have any magical item that has a really mundane ability, either in a game, in real life, or just seeing it being used in a TV show, fiction, or movie, either having it yourself in a game or real life, or seeing it someone else use it in any shape or sense, what would it be? As in, what would the item be, and what would the mundane ability be? See, my favourite idea is a fork that anything that it spikes cooks it to the safe temperature of being able to be edible without poisoning. If it is not possible to eat it, it then burns it to the point of which that it is just dust. But if you stab it into a living creature, it burns a small chunk of their flesh, and then you basically have a small chunk that comes off, and it's now cooked to the exact perfection of which that you can eat it, or it just basically just turns into dust. So
I was about to ask that question.
Yeah, so it can be used on living creatures, but it's not necessarily, and it takes a few seconds. So it takes about, let's say, 5 seconds. So it's kind of it's not exactly the best way to kill someone. Potentially, it could be very usable for torture, but it's more supposed to be used for, like, cutting something into multiple chunks, taking it up, and then just holding it for 5 seconds as it fully cooks it. Home. Eat.
Yummy.
But that's my one. I mean, either in real life or in a show, that would be great.
That would be the worst way to kill someone, just multiply stabbing someone with a fork, and it's just seared a bit of a chunk and then just
It would
eating
take
it.
it would take a long time, but it's still possible. It's not a
I
very
mean, the point is the long time, though. It's like
yeah.
it's a really long.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna
Death
save it every morsel.
Ew.
Instead of death by 1,000 cuts, death by 1,000 prods.
So yeah, mundane items, mundane powers, mundane whatever. Let's see what you guys have got.
Okay, I would like a blanket or a duvet that is guaranteed to give you a perfect night's sleep every single time. When you place it on someone, if they're feeling even the littlest bit tired, they'll just fall to the just sort of float to the floor and have a nice sleep. And that's good for subduing people, and also you'll be refreshed every single time you go under it.
I like that, because that could be, you could still have the weakness of that thing be it doesn't work if you've just slept, or you are perfectly or overly awake.
Yeah, it won't that it's just a blanket. But if you're a little bit sleepy, it's great, because you'll always be refreshed and your insomnia will be cured forever. Actually, no, if you have serious insomnia, it probably wouldn't work, because it's like, I can't get to sleep.
But some people who have insomnia are tired and or exhausted, therefore it could still work.
Yeah.
As we said, if it only works for those who are, it only wouldn't work against those people who are overly or very awake, or at least not tired.
Yeah.
That could be really useful.
My secret is I'm always tired.
That's my secret. opens out fist because can't actually clench it. I'm always so tired.
God.
I'm just so tired. What about you, Sam?
So,
Has he
the man.
disconnected? He might have disconnected. Oh no. It was going so well. Either that or he's having a very long ponder.
I was thinking so hard.
Thinking so very, very hard on this
There we go.
very difficult... There he is.
Look at that.
I didn't know how long we could stall.
Okay.
So what
Right.
would what would your mundane item be?
Okay. Well, mundane item. Probably like a bracelet. Like
Okay.
it was like just the kind of like it's a rope with some blocks around them.
Okay. So what would its mundane ability be?
Mundane ability. Moral certainty.
Could you please explain to those at home?
Think that.
Okay.
What?
Well. Okay. Here's what it is. You know sometimes you can't be bothered to do the good thing, or to care about doing the good thing, or don't really want to do, or just really want to do the bad thing. It makes you realize you gotta do the good thing. It like tells you like this is the good thing to do.
So the
Like,
ring lets you
pretty much
know.
it kind of shows you it kind of enforces the right thing. Like, yes, this is the right thing to do.
So in other words, it's a ring that lets you know. No, pardon me. Lets
Bracelet.
you know
Bracelet,
what.
yeah.
Okay, so it's a bracelet that lets you know what the right thing is, or at least that you're not doing the right thing if you're not doing it, or at least what choice would be the right thing if you say, okay, what if I did this? And then the ring makes happy ring noises. I mean bracelet noises. The bracelet makes happy bracelet noises.
Essentially-
It should be like a bangle where it just jingles
Alex,
around.
Alex, do you have that blanket?
I'm gonna sleep.
It's either, it was either that or probably the greatest power that was in Charlotte,
Oh,
which
that
was the
was
last which was the last power he got, which was the power of courage.
Ah.
So
Honestly, that honestly was the best part of that. Was the last part was just courage.
So a quick question: out of the three items that we've just spoken about, what item would you prefer to choose in real life?
I'm kind of going for like. I like my blanket and all
I
that.
have to
like,
be honest.
really
As
cool
much as I want that blanket, I have been thinking either the moral choice ring, bracelet, the moral choice bracelet, or the perfectly cooked fork, because it could be called the well done fork.
Oh.
Well done, well done.
To be honest, I'm leaning towards my one or the
To
blanket.
be honest, that is the wildest stuff that's ever come out of your mouth. But
It
that
is
actually
probably
worth
the most
it.
perfect one. It's so difficult because I think this does mean it's a win for Sam only because, as much as I would love a perfect night's sleep, the ability to cook things perfectly, and the ability to know whether or not my moral choices, even if I do say that I would definitely, if I was presented these things, I would definitely choose the fork. I'd still have to think about the moral choice ring, even just for a second. Which means bracelet, which means it's so forgettable. Which means that's part of the mundanity. Which means if I did choose it, that would be great. Yes, it's the ring of moral choice, and I just pick it up. Haha, bad choices because it was actually supposed to be the bracelet of good choices. No. So
I said moral certainty.
Yeah,
It's
moral
pretty much to
certainty.
It's pretty much to kind of reinforce the idea of you doing.
Yeah.
good
It lets you know whether or not the choice that you're doing is a good choice or is the good choice, or what you're doing is a bad choice. Like no, there is a better choice. You were given it, so choose that one. It doesn't force it upon you. It just tells you for certain whether or not it was or wasn't a good or the good choice.
Yeah.
That's
Like-
that's still pretty good. That's a really good mundane ability, but I still think Sam, you win this one because even though I would pick my fork, if those three things are laid in front of me, I've got to be honest, I'd at least give it a second glance before I picked up the fork. So I definitely think that you win, since we all voted for our own things. I definitely say that you win this one.
Yeah, honestly, I will change. I mean, I would like to steal both, to be honest, because I would sleep on it with my magical blanket and then come to a decision.
And then the moral choice would be like, no, you shouldn't steal things. You said you totally take one.
Oh god damn it! It's a cursed item.
And then it only gives you bad choices.
It tells you no, put the blanket back.
Speaking of which, we barely spoke about these either. Cursed items. What is your favourite cursed items?
I thought we agreed we were going to do that next time, or make that another video.
I mean,
because there's loads of cursed items that are so cool.
I don't think that we're going to do it next though, because we always promise that we're going to do items, but I feel like it takes us a long time to have this. But I guess this is around about the good time that we can actually end this video actually now. So if any of you guys were actually watching this on Twitch, we'll probably be trying to stream a lot more of these in the future. If you guys are actually interested, we are also going to be streaming on Sunday, as we're going to actually be doing dev plays, which will just basically be us playing through the game that I've been developing with these lovely guests of mine and more people on the Discord channel. As we've been designing and developing Animite Tales, a tabletop RPG that we'll be playing on Discord, because obviously lockdown is still a thing and we all live in different locations. So we'll be playing a variant of it. Usually it's supposed to be based on superpowers and more of a modern / sort of a more sci-fi fantasy sort of era. But we're actually going to be going into the fantasy era, sort of proving the concepts for how well the superpower mechanics, the faith mechanics, and a few of the other different mechanics in the game actually work well to be translated in a similar setting as Dungeons and Dragons. This campaign, I've been calling it this, thanks to Alex's quick wit, Animite Tales, Animite Fables campaign. So if you guys are interested in hearing us all fumble around and fail miserably at doing a D&D style Animite Tales campaign, you also will get to see us developing it and stress testing the game. Will be you actually get to see the growth of it as it has come right now, and then as you watch the sessions, you'll actually get to see new mechanics being used, or even mechanics being tweaked in between sessions. So if you guys are interested in that, definitely keep an eye on us. We're called the Betarians on our YouTube channel. You can obviously see us on our Twitch channel. I think, if I'm correct, my Twitch channel is called Mystical Joe.
Joey the Mystic or something.
Joey the Mystic. I'm so bad at remembering things. Hang on a second. I've got it here. Joey the Mystic. So if you guys are interested in hearing us on here, it's Joey the Mystic at the Twitch channel, and I do actually have a Twitter, so you guys can actually hear more of us, more from specifically me. If you guys want to actually hear any of my weird things that I actually say, we actually have at Animite Tales as well for the Twitter. But yes, if you guys are interested in hearing anything else, seeing anything else, or even just being able to support us, we also have a Patreon as well. Check us out on Twitter, YouTube, or even here on Twitch. This will be up for a little bit, but we'll also be posting it as soon as possible on the YouTube channel as well, so you can actually do that. Actually, guys, there was something else that I wanted to actually say to you two before I actually announce what the next podcast is. At some point as well, we'll also be trying to get these audio files only onto not only SoundCloud, but attempting to try and also put them onto Spotify.
Ooh.
So that then people can hear them on the go and basically be able to just hear the nonsense that we usually have to state as we attempt to go on. So if anyone's interested in that, just definitely stay tuned. So the next session, I was about to say campaign. Then the next podcast we'll be looking into is godly pantheons and god-like powers, or should I say god powers. So we'll be delving into what makes god powers, what are interesting god powers, and the gods of other specific pantheons and mythological path. So Norse, Greek, Roman, even just any other kinds of things like Celtic, pagan, any kind of things like that. But we'll also be more speaking
Japanese.
about Japanese. Yeah, we'll also be more speaking about specifically their powers and what exactly consummates as either physical, celestial, demonic, or even just in deific. We'll be talking about basically
The Sam Hour. They're going
this.
to be the
Pretty
Sam
much.
Hour.
This is why I thought that you'd like this, Sam.
I mean, best part is I also get to mention probably Code Geass and or Overlord.
Oh,
in this
absolutely.
For God, King, Emperors.
Oh, absolutely. And I actually get to talk a little bit more about. Sorry for people in advance. I probably won't be shutting up about Dragon Ball Z, Supernatural,
Sadness.
and of course, probably the biggest one I'll actually probably be exploring a lot of is God of War, or at least specifically things like God of War.
I mean, wrong. Most of it is wrong.
I mean, yes,
it gets some things right, like
but
the gods all being incredible decks.
We'll be actually more talking about not necessarily just the legends. We'll actually be talking about what consummates god powers. So what necessarily consummates is a character being a god, having god powers, or just being a demigod. We'll also be talking about celestial beings. So godlike entities and celestial beings, basically.
Mm.
So you definitely get to shine here because I know that you have loads of things to talk about.
I mean, considering I know from the primordials to the titans to the gods to the demigods, their ranking of importance and such. The fact that as you go lower down the totem pole, they have more specialized. They become incredibly more specialized. Like, oh, I'm the god of all darkness. Next. And then you go down to, like, Demeter. Oh, I'm the goddess of the harvest.
I'm the god of awkward moments in small enclosed spaces. Well, that sounds really, really specific. Yeah, but we're in an elevator, and the buttons are not working. Ah, oh, damn it, this is really awkward. Aha! See?
Or probably the best, probably the nicest one, which I can't remember his name, was like... He was a human that was just smited. He was just smote by Zeus because he found the way to make immortality.
Well, we'll be talking about all sorts of different things like that next time. No. It shows that there's going to be a large pool of different things that we can talk about. I know that I have quite a few, and I'm assuming that Alex will have quite a few.
I'll play some Hades for research, so
fair enough. I mean,
Yes.
If not, there's always a decent way to research just specifically god powers, or at least characters that have quote-unquote god-like abilities. Because, I mean, obviously we'll be talking at that point about stuff like immortality, omnipotence, omniscience, omni-something, omega, etc. But
Dracula, probably.
But regardless... as always, it's good to be able to podcast with you guys. Thanks for coming along again. We'll try and make more of a thing of this, especially twitching it. So if you guys are interested in hearing more, definitely stay tuned. Comment or message us at Animite Tales just to let us know what kind of subject you want us to talk about next. Any kind of like discussions that you want us to sort of like hit up, or even just basically whine at each other about like how we just wouldn't stop talking about what exactly consummates as a magical item or a power granting item for how many months since the last video.
Yeah.
So either way,
Also, thanks Connor for listening to all this before me saying your name.
yes, thank you very much, our fans, specifically Connor, because I know that he's been like wanting specifically this, because you told me quite a lot about this as well.
For being a key worker and keeping the Tesco store filled with trolleys. I salute you, Connor.
This is not sponsored by Tesco's, but boy howdy, we wish it was. Hint, hint.
If only.
If only indeed. But yes, thank you to all key workers, and thank you for listening to our podcast. Hopefully you guys have gotten something out of this. If you enjoyed this, I guess hit a like. Whatever, I don't care.
whatever. all I could
Whatever.
care.
So I could care. You know what is a magical item, though? That amazing computer that you have either in your hands, on your lap, or on your desk, as it connects you to us. Nah. Bye.
Later.
I will see you in the future.
Ciao, ciao for now, my guys, my dudes, my peeps.
And do that.